right, rev it up a little bit. That's such a weird modern sound. Hello YouTube, from Drift Week 10. I have Elliot Bright's car, and I think this thing is rad. It is kind of like a newer car that gets people excited. It's not the exact same old chassis all the time. I want to show it to you real quickly, show you why it's cool, why I think it's neat, why you're a traitor if you don't buy a brand new Toyota Subaru thing from Toyota. Okay, this is the owner, Elliot Bright. We're gonna get to him in a second, but first, the car, because you're not here for Elliot, you're here for the car. This is a 2024, I think, GR86 with the Vortex supercharger on it. It looks super duper cute. It's kind of what I would think like a modern S chassis would look like. Rear wheel drive, transmission there, flat four, I don't like that thing. These cars would be incredibly epic if they had like a normal inline 4-cylinder or 6-cylinder in there. But the proportion is better than a Supra. You sit more in the middle of the car than in the back. It handles better than the newer Supras, I think. It's lighter. It's way cooler looking than the normal Supras, but you can fight me on that. And no one else makes a cheap rear-wheel drive car that fits cool wheels and all this other stuff. Look around it real quickly. See what we're doing. They're comfortable. The handbrake works. They have enough steering angle from the factory. They have a cute, simple interior that's not overly complex with a giant screen like in the new BMWs that wraps around the whole dash and is complicated. It has sporty, simple seats, nice interior. People go nuts trying to put interiors back in S chassis and spend more than you could buy this entire car for. So those are the pluses, and we're about to get to the car. The bad sides around these cars, which is why I haven't bought one yet, even though I want to, is the motors are absolute trash. I think they don't have enough horsepower. And while this car, like on a skid pad, will absolutely drift and jam around in second, you shift this thing to third and it is dead. The most boring car on earth in third. So it's kind of a second gear, first gear hero, looks rad, has all the drivetrain in the correct direction. They come with a limited slip from the factory, which is something almost no BMW does, unless you buy a wacky looking M car, which is overly complicated, has giant grills and stuff. So it's kind of in a class of its own. No one makes anything like this. Maybe the Miata, but I don't fit in one, so a Miata is not even a choice. Tell us each individual modification you made super fast. Sure. What made the big difference, starting with the best first?
Sure, so it is a 24 GR86, which is the same from 22 to 24. I'm sure 25 is the same. Something you talked about, the engine, actually, Toyota dropped that they're planning to put the 3-cylinder turbo from their Corolla into the next version of this chassis.
Of course, the only engine that actually sounds worse than this flat 4 is a 3-cylinder.
At least it'll be a Toyota product, so it'll be more reliable than the Subaru.
Yes.
But I think actually that low center of gravity that they keep harping on does contribute to some of the driving characteristics in the car. I keep describing this car as like delightful. It is so inviting to drift. I agree with you. When you get to third gear, it's kind of dead. I did a test day with this at Willow with the supercharger after I blew like a vacuum leak. I didn't notice, so I was making like 1 pound of boost. So I was driving balcony fine, using third down the straight and going to about the house and then downshifting to second. So you can use third.
Okay, but you're talking as a supercharger already before even NA.
No, with like 1 pound of boost. I don't think that counts.
1 pound of boost is a supercharged car with boost.
It was
okay, before we get to that, the audience doesn't know what it has.
All right.
Tell me about it.
Sure, so let's talk about the build. The car was put together by Spectre Built, and the stickers are from Spectre Wraps, which you know stickers are most important. Add 5 horsepower per sticker.
Okay.
Very crucial on this car.
Come on.
Vortec did the job of putting the supercharger in. I'll show you that.
Okay.
We'll get a little bit of sound clip to close this out, but it's a centrifugal style supercharger, which means it looks like a turbo. But I think the highlight of these Vortec kits and why they don't throw belts as much and all the FD guys run these is because the pulley is so damn close to the crank, and it's located basically where a root style would land. All the Magnuson kits and those other companies keep their pulley super close and they don't blow belts.
I was gonna say just because the engine can't accelerate fast enough to throw a belt.
No, this thing revs to 8,000, dude. So I think it's their choice of keeping that pulley so close is really what makes it like OEM dependable. So I plan to add this to my Mustang, so I didn't have as much luck with the previous supercharger. But that's how we get power in this. We run on ethanol. Counterspace Garage did the tuning. Zach actually, who's the main tuner there, tuned my first GR8, my first FRS, which is how I started drifting back at E-Town. So that's a cool little piece for me. It's actually got stock headers, but we've got an AWE touring catback exhaust, overpipe, and a mid-pipe, so that's where we get the noise from. It does sound pretty decent for a 4-banger. We've got the full FDF catalog. But in the front, we're running their mini kit. This is actually only the second kit that Josiah's built.
Is that a stock arm that's cut and you bolt it on?
It's pretty gnarly.
That is weird.
So they cut it there. There's 3 holes underneath there for adjustment. So you can go wider than this or more narrow. Yeah. And then it's got this bolt-on adapter to the knuckle that you can kind of see here. And it keeps an OEM style ball joint. And then you keep your bushings on the chassis side. So it kind of decreases stuff loosening, which is nice. It's a little bit nicer to you on the highway. It does get a pretty decent amount of angle. We're mostly angled out here in unload and driving. It gets a little more, but I call it about 60 degrees or so, which I think is more than enough for this chassis and this power. If you're going beyond that, you're parking it. So obviously BC coilovers all over, which you guys probably saw under there. Avid 1 wheels. The fitment for this is perfect with an 18 by 8.5 plus 35. If you're running all the stock body panels and the stock front end, you can actually even add a spacer. Because of the widened track width in the front, I've got a bunch of negative camber to clear the fenders, but it does clear the fenders and it's not eating it too much. It is self-clearancing a little. It's kind of a fun thing being a new car. You don't always see people doing this, but you can see it's kind of ground its way out here, and I think it fits perfect.
Is this an aftermarket piece right here?
This piece and the vent itself is not aftermarket, but that's an inlay that I added that's carbon.
Okay. So I was going to say, this is so aggressive looking for a factory fender. It almost, I thought it would already had an aftermarket fender on it.
It's actually functional. So those holes breathe. There's a bunch of ducting that comes from the factory on these. The front ducting here all communicates to the brakes, because these cars they're great drift cars, but I think they were thinking a little bit more of grip drivers. I think that's what really makes this car so special, is that it's so inviting in every way. If you want to daily drive this, save some money on gas, doesn't get great gas mileage, but definitely better than like a Camaro or a Mustang. You could do that. It does fit a ton of stuff. It's not as roomy as the Mustang for Drift Week, but we're making it work. You want to drift it, like Aaron was saying, for skid pad or learning, it's, I think, the best car that's out there. And then if you want to grip drive it, it's phenomenal for grip driving. So you can really grow with the chassis.
So how much horsepower did it make?
We haven't dynoed it. The butt dyno says about 300 to the wheels-ish on 91, and around 350 on ethanol, which is basically what these will do. You can run more boost. We're only peaking at 7.8 PSI all the way at 8,000 RPM. So strangely, it's a supercharger. When you think of superchargers, you think of like instant torque and power, but because...
Well, no, because it's boost by RPM.
It's a centrifugal supercharger. It doesn't really make a...
It makes zero boost down low, and then it ramps up. So it's actually like an intake manifold blockage, like a restriction at low horsepower.
It's got a parasitic effect for sure. But I think it keeps the character of the car true, because this car is meant to be driven 11/10ths. If you've got all this torque down low, you don't drive it that way. So keeping that character in the car, I think, is really cool. And the Type 1 clutch we put in it is also a street style clutch. It's a twin disc, but it's organic. So if you roast the clutch like I did trying to save the pavement here, you will be able to resurface it by driving it normally, and it takes all that torque just fine.
Next question. You have a supercharged Mustang you've brought on Drift Week. I don't know if it was supercharged at the time and everything, but you've got a pretty crazy Mustang. You've done multiple Drift Weeks. Is this a better Drift Week car than your Mustang?
I think that they're equal, but in different ways. The strengths of the Mustang are durability and space inside and power, right? So the Mustang would probably be an easier car to drive at a fast track like Ridge here, but on a track like where were we last? Villains. I think at Villains it would have felt kind of overstuffed. Maybe the gnocchi dip would have been cooler, but overall the track would be a little bit more annoying. So this car, the highlights are that it doesn't consume any tires. The Mustang, I think I went through 42 or 44 tires on my first Drift Week. I did 14 on one day.
And how many do you think you'll go through on this?
I'll be impressed if I finish all 24 Ford that I ordered, honestly.
So half the tire wear, if
half
that.
the tire wear, the fuel consumption.
And they're smaller tires.
Smaller, cheaper tires, smaller, cheaper wheels. So consumables, this is a much cheaper car to run, but you're gonna struggle at the bigger courses. I think, again, like this is great for beginner to medium intermediate. To go full pro on these chassis, I think it's not that car anymore at all. Mustang is the same, but I think at that level, the chassis of the Mustang, like RTR has proven, is so much better when you do all the stuff to make it work right.
You're on crack, but keep going.
Look, I mean, they're rocket ships. James is like, you know,
no, they are. But I was gonna
but
say, if you put that much money into a tiny car like this, I feel like you'd be doing really well too.
Yeah, so I mean, this car was $30,000 base. I got the premium package and the performance package, which add the big brakes and a bunch of other stuff I removed, and the duckbill spoiler. So I don't know if it was worth it for me, but $35,000 to have the full trim of this car. There's nothing else you can add to it. Where the Mustang I had spec'd out, I almost bought one actually, was $65,000 just to be the same, and that's not the top of the top for the Mustang.
Yeah.
And then you add all these other things, you start adding, you know, you're at a $100,000 car pretty quickly.
All right, I'm gonna take this conversation back.
Bye.
I think that these cars are way cooler, and most of us get into drifting because we like Japanese stuff, we like small cars, we like things that rev high, we like all these things. The Mustangs never really epitomized that for me. In some ways, they were super cool because they had good V8s.
Not to steal this back, one point I did want to make that you'll appreciate is for tandems, if you're trying to jam with the boys and you like chasing, I do think that this car is better because it drives more like other cars, where the Mustang has a personality of its own.
I was gonna say also, I saw you tandeming in this thing, and I immediately thought you were driving better than I'd ever seen you in your Mustang, because the car is so small and you sit so far forward. And something that I learned, like having a 911 and some cars, you can see over the hood all the way down, and you can almost see like the ground, which sounds crazy, but like in a Corvette or a car that you sit further back in a Supra, there's no confidence in where you're going. And this thing, sorry, keep going.
You need to see fender reference. And if you sit in the car and show them, you can see the bump on the passenger side fender, and so you know basically exactly where that wheel is. And the Mustang, I can see that on the driver's side, but on the passenger side, I'm completely guessing. So
this is my eye line, and you can see over the hood of the car, and most Mustangs and stuff you see straight that way. And if you're in a Viper, the hood is like up here and you can see nothing.
In the Mustang, if I can see any part of the trunk, I'm not close. It's insane. So
so before you close it and we rev it up and do a few other things, I just wanted to say so many of us feel nostalgic for Japanese stuff. All the interiors in our S13s, we just want like stock SRs in some of them, or like a stock JZX, and just to enjoy the car. And all those things are getting so expensive. I think this is way cooler now almost than buying an S15, which is getting old and falling apart and rusting. You got so much trouble getting it from Japan, and it's 25 years old. And yes, ultimately I think an S15 was like a more interesting designed car because the engine's way cooler and everything else than this thing. However, this is a really nice modern interior, and the car is still tunable, even though we all hate this stupid engine. But as you'll see in a second, 300 horsepower is plenty, and it still bolts on and all this stuff. Here, start it up real quick and let's hear it.
I will say you could do ABS, Villains, Adams, balcony, all NA. But if you want to do big boy tracks or drive with buddies with more horsepower, you need a Vortex kit.
This thing sounds awful on startup, by the way.
It does have a high cold start.
Yeah, cold starts on these things are real weird. All right, rev it up a little bit. That's such a weird modern sound compared to what I'm used to.
We modified the red line to just be a soft hang because we were having some limp mode problems. And I think it was related to voltage spike from the alternator, and it's gotten better since we did the soft hang. The stock computer didn't do that, so you can keep that if you want, but...
Rev it up once from inside here so we can hear.
Sure.
So anyways, you're a traitor if you don't buy one of these before they get tariffed and before they're ridiculously terminated and everything else. If they come out with a 1.3, even with without a new body style, I think that's a no-brainer. These things are so cool looking, I think, and the size and everything else, they're smaller than an S chassis. I love them.
The wheelbase is actually almost identical.
Do an S chassis?
Yeah.
Yeah, but S chassis
The
have
overhang
longer
is the overhang
overhangs,
is different, which is
especially
nice.
the back.
If you like crashing your rear end into stuff, it might not be the chassis for you.
Yeah. Elliot took me for a ride, and I was like, oh my God, Elliot beats on this car so badly. He was driving it from curb to curb, like being very aggressive in the line he took, how hard he was driving the car, and then also in the way he beat on the car on red line and everything else.
A lot of clutch work.
And I was like, God, Elliot's kind of retarded. And he hates his car. So he was very kind and let me take the car for a lap. I took the car for a lap with him in it. I literally couldn't get it into boost. A supercharged car, I couldn't get it in boost because I wasn't willing to drive it as hard as he does. And then
I hopped out.
he hopped out and let me take another lap.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to have some words about this. A, the supercharger is straight garbage on this car.
No,
Garbage,
no.
garbage, garbage,
You just got to
garbage.
drive it with bigger balls, and it's not your own car, so
Yeah.
it's stressful to drive
So
a little car in the rain without the owner.
How much boost does the car make at 3,000 RPM?
Like 1 to 2 pounds,
How much does it make at 5,000 RPM?
like 4 pounds,
How much does it make at 7,000 RPM?
6-ish.
Okay, so
This is a big pulley.
So if you-
because this is the most conservative pulley you can put on it. There is a smaller pulley where you make like the peak at 7,000-8,000 is 7-ish, 8-ish pounds.
yeah.
But if you run the next pulley, you'll get to like 13 to 15 pounds, which has been proven to be reliable for regular ripping around in these cars
Yeah.
in a turbo setup. So I just didn't think I needed it for drifting.
Well, I just wanted to state that A, I hate the car.
No!
B, no, I hate the power band of the car.
Okay.
The power band, especially as you're a V8 guy,
Sure.
is not what you would think from a supercharged car. Is that
But-
accurate? It's
If you're
peaky
used to-
as hell
if you're used
and
to-
makes nothing until 6,000. I just want to be clear, on 235s, it can't spin 235s unless you clutch kick the car above 6 grand. Are you accurate? Like that's accurate?
It's probably
In second gear,
It's probably accurate.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
But
so I just don't want anyone to go out and buy this thing
No!
thinking
Oh my
that
God.
this is going to be a great
It's
car.
not gonna, it doesn't make up for driving, right? And that's the thing. Not that you're a bad driver. You're an excellent driver. You're years beyond me as a driver. But you have to be willing to crash the car. That's like kind of the mentality.
Have you ever driven a 350Z?
I have, yeah.
They're a lot torquier than this, aren't they?
They
Kinda
yeah,
crazy.
Yeah. They make more torque earlier, but they don't have as, like, at the top, I'd say this is more peppy. If you're willing to keep this above 5.6, it's better power than a 350 or a 370. And it weighs 400 pounds less.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, so final thought. The car is light, it's nimble, feels pretty good on 235s. It can't spin the tires on 235s because it's not nearly as powerful as a VQ. Power band is very peaky with the Vortex supercharger. I hate it.
All right, guys, I'm editing right now, and I stopped editing for a second so I could show you this. I'm on a random forum. I'm looking up, this is a stock FRS versus a Vortex supercharger kit with 9 PSI, and then you can read all the guy's mods and stuff. He has a bunch of mods on the thing, but this is torque, this line, and then the red one is horsepower for a stock one, torque is stock horsepower, or stock torque, and then this line is supercharged horsepower, and that line is supercharged torque. The supercharged torque, and I'm explaining why this thing feels so crazy to drive. Let's see if we can get RPM on here. At 3,000 RPM in this car, stock, you're making, oh God, 130 foot-pounds of torque at the wheels. In supercharged, you're making 150 torque at the wheels. And then as you go through here, you're only adding, I don't know, 40 torque throughout the entire power band. And you are adding more horsepower, but it doesn't really feel that significant until you're over 5,000 RPM. And these cars only rev to, like 8. So you really only have a usable power band because you're adding more tire to compensate for the more horsepower, because That's how drifters are. We like more tire and everything. So Elliot is on a 235 Velino, whereas the stock FRS is on a very non-grippy, probably like 215. I'm not quite sure on the tire size. But he can barely spin his tires unless he's beating the crap out of his car over 5,000 RPM. And you can see even as a supercharged engine, it is only making 100 and let's say generously 75 wheel torque through here. And you're only at 4,000 RPM making 160 foot-pounds of torque supercharged at the wheels. And at 5,000 RPM, you're only making like 100 and, let's be generous and say 70 wheel torque. I'm not used to these numbers. This is awful Corolla crap. And I guess it is basically a Corolla and that's why we love the thing. But like, I drive V8s and JZ cars and SR cars and everything else. And even an SR car would make way more than this. Literally stock. So anyways, I'm just not used to dyno sheets looking this terrible and then being no torque and blah, blah, blah. What's interesting, as it ramps up from 0 to 9 PSI, it's basically just creating a mostly flat torque curve where normally an engine would fall off a bit or something like that on the top end. It's just drawing a nice straight line. But it's not really, you wouldn't think this is a supercharger. You would just think it's a naturally aspirated engine that flows really well. Ugh, gross. One more thing from editing, Aaron. I forgot to record a clip saying that I did drive another stock FRS that was, or GR86 that was beat up at the event on stockish tires, stockish wheels, completely stock horsepower, completely stock car on the same place and track and everything as I drove the GR86 with a supercharger. And I vastly preferred the stock tire grip car and it was super fun. It did the whole track. I did tons of laps, didn't hurt the tires. I adored it. I really did like the stockish car. With more grip, it kind of ruined the car because the car doesn't have enough torque to overcome it. Maybe if you turboed the car, and I don't want to waste all your time and go look at like dyno sheets of turbo cars and stuff, but the stockish stock grip car drove way better than the overgripped car. That's it. So I did really enjoy the stock GR86. It was a black one too, which was funny.
If you ran this on 215s, these are also 08Cs. So
Yeah.
I like driving my cars super gripped up because I'm used to comp driving.
Yeah,
I'm
I
trying to
understand.
undo that a little bit.
My job is
But-
also to be funny over here.
Yeah, well,
Okay. I was going to say, I love the chassis. I love the way the chassis feels. The chassis is nimble, it's light, it's way cooler than most cars. My 350Z feels like a tank compared to this thing.
yeah.
The steering doesn't have enough caster for whatever reason, so it doesn't self-steer as well as you would think. Although the steering is very nimble and light and feels good,
Yeah.
I think the car doesn't have enough caster for whatever reason, so it kind of has to lead the steering because the steering doesn't self-steer fast enough, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You can't just let go of the steering and let it sort itself out.
I agree. I mean, part of that is also because it's not a hydraulic rack.
Yeah.
I do think with enough geometry, you can fix that. But I am trying to make really big wheels and tires work on stock fenders. If you, again, smaller wheels and tires, or opening up those fenders, you would have plenty. Like Sean, the V8 car, you should check that car out, do a comparison.
Yeah.
You'll probably love that car.
Okay.
He runs like 7 degrees, but he's
And it
got the
works
wide
great.
fenders, and it works great. Yeah.
Okay. I was gonna say, if a like V8 or JZ S13 is, let's say, like a 9 or 10 or something like that on the drift scale, and a 350Z is like a 6-ish on the drift scale, where would you put this car?
If a JZX you're saying is like a 10? Is
No,
that-
not a
yeah.
JZX, like an
Sorry.
S13 with a JZ or V8 or something.
You know, fun
like that.
fact, I've never driven an S chassis drifting. I almost bought one in college.
Well, anyways, I'd put this at like a 4.
A 4? No way.
Yeah.
No way.
Steering is a little weak.
No
Doesn't
way.
self-center well enough. And the power band is really bad.
No.
I wanted to love this car so much,
Have
and
you-
you let me down.
have you- So we finally got more juice and more power, and then I broke second gear. That's it.